Hello and welcome to Superpower Broadcasting. I'm Kevin Castley. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Tonight we are going to be discussing the protests that have risen in fascist Russia in the wake of Navalny being arrested upon his return to Russia. Now, this was something with the actual Kremlin that, is it surprising? Absolutely not. It was pretty obvious that they were going to arrest Navalny the second he returned. Navalny was poisoned by the Kremlin. He had to essentially flee to be treated, and then he went back, and now he's arrested. And now, as a result of the demonstrations, 3,500 people have been arrested across Russia. And I want to talk a little bit about the significance of this, what the West should do, and what Navalny would actually mean for Western-Russian relations. So the first part is the actual significance of this. Well, it's not that surprising that the Kremlin would arrest its primary opponent. Now, this guy's got, about 6 million subscribers on YouTube. He does have a big following in Russia. And so if they just outright killed him, it would make him a martyr. So they do this sort of intimidation tactics against him, the poisoning, etc. And then maybe it kills him, maybe it doesn't. In this case, he survived. Either way, they get their point across. He goes back. He does what he's going to do. They arrest him. No surprise there. We see how the Kremlin has treated anybody that runs awry throughout hundreds of years, right? Look at what they did to Alexander Solzhenitsyn, for example. Look at what they did to Sakharov. Look at what they did to anybody who ever criticized them, regardless of the system. Whether it's the Tsars, whether it's the communists, whether it's the mafia elites, or whether it's the fascists around Putin and the oligarchy that they have right now. I've talked about it on many occasions. We talked about it recently. I had a video just today appearing on my channel and premiering rather about the essentially the similarities, the overlap between elitism and populism. That when we talk about elitism, we have these conceptions of the elites in our society, but Russia is one of the most elitist societies in the world. It's an oligarchy in which about 3,000 families, roughly about 3,000 families, take literally all of the fruits of the labor of the Russian people since the fall of communism, essentially. We're talking about a country in which the people today in 2021 make exactly the same in real terms as what they did in 1989. They haven't moved up. They also haven't really moved down. We're talking about a country that, yes, they switched their communist ideology, but the people are just as worse off now as they were under communism in the late period of it. We have a system that went from being incredibly far left and stagnant to being incredibly far right and stagnant. Alexei Navalny is somebody who has based his political candidacy, his popularity, his movement on stamping out corruption in Russia. Now, isn't that ambitious? Isn't that daunting? Russia is one of the most corrupt societies in history, and especially in existence today. Russia is completely immersed in corruption. It's satellite states. Everything that they got about corruption and everything they got from the Russians. Ukraine, for example, it's all a result of being tainted by the Russians. That's what they do. That's like what they're best at. People say, oh, Russia is known as an arms exporter. It's like, yeah, and they're also a corruption exporter. They export their corruption abroad. The corruption internally is just stifling. Again, we're talking about a country, 140 million people. The most vast natural resource wealth of any nation in the world. You'd think they'd be making bank. Yet Estonia makes 3 times what they make, and they have no resources or anything. And you're like, what? Because they're not a corrupt shithole country, as Trump would say, right? The way that Russia is. Now, that's not to say that there isn't a lot of money in Russia. It's pretty good if you're one of those 3,000 elites or so, the oligarchs, as we would think of them. And of course, the oligarchs is a smaller subset of that. We're talking like the total extent of the elite class in Russia. But they're the ones that the entire country works for, right? And this is something that when we talk about Navalny, we have to bear in mind. Navalny's objective, first and foremost, is to essentially get rid of this stagnant force, this corrupt force, this corruption in Russia. Is he a darling of the West? Absolutely not. I know that there are people out there saying, "Oh, he's CIA, man." It's like, no, he's not. No, he's not. He wants to get rid of Russia's corruption, so that Russia can fight better. Russia can be a more formidable force. Russia can be stronger. Do any of us want Russia to be stronger? No. So let's keep that in mind. Let's absolutely keep that in mind here. I don't want a nationalist Russia that's not corrupt to challenge the United States. In other words, it's actually better that they're as incompetent and corrupt and stagnant as they are right now than if Navalny was in charge. Because if Navalny had been in charge all these years, Russia would be a lot more successful in Syria, a lot more successful in the Middle East, a lot more successful in Europe. I mean, he's a Russian nationalist. Anybody who supports Western hegemony obviously is going to run into conflict with Russian nationalists, right? He just wants to make Russia more efficient. Now, are there things that he wants to do that would be better for the Russian people and things that would be agreeable to us? Yes, there are. But let's not buy into this delusion that he's somehow a CIA plant or he's somebody. Oh, he's a color revolution by America. I've seen a bunch of tankies and stuff saying, "Oh, he's just CIA and everything." It's like, why would the CIA hype up a guy who wants to make their enemy stronger and more efficient? That's stupid. Navalny's not on our side. Now, is Navalny better than Putin for people in Russia? Yeah, absolutely. But the only good thing about the Putin system is that it's so inept, it's so corrupt that it hurts its own ability to perpetuate power effectively. I mean, look at the Kuznetsov. They're the pride of their navy, belches smoke, runs aground, has all these fires and everything. I mean, even when it's operating at peak capacity, even when it's operating at normal capacity, just business as usual, the thing looks like somebody hit it with a massive cruise missile, because it's just an old diesel powered rinky dinky rusty dusty flagship. That's it. They're not a very serious naval threat. Italy has a bigger and more capable navy than fascist Russia does. And it's true. And Italy is the fourth biggest navy, if I recall correctly, in all of NATO. Now, so do any of us want to see them have a more powerful navy, a more powerful air force, a more efficient operating doctrine, a less corrupt system? Well, if they were under Western hegemony, yes, of course. I mean, the same way that we would like to see less corruption in the UK and France and everything, right? But Russia's not on our side. And if Navalny's in charge, they're still not going to be on our side. They're still going to be aiming 8,000 nukes at us. They're just going to be doing it in a more efficient way, where at every level of the government, there's not absolute bribes and corruption everywhere that stifle the process. So I want to be clear about that. I don't regard Navalny as an ally of the West, and he doesn't regard himself as an ally of the West either. He's a Russian nationalist, and I'm opposed to Russian nationalism. I want American hegemony through the world. So that's my bias there. Now, to the point that, and we have the Politicrat joining us right now, actually, and we'll bring on the Politicrat. I'm also going to actually send an invite out to Henry, too. I mean, I might have already invited Henry. Let's see. Well, yeah. Well, I'll get the invite going, and then we'll bring the Politicrat on. I'll finish my point though before I proceed to do that. Yeah, no, I've got an invite going out to Henry. If Henry feels like popping in, we probably only go about half an hour or so. We got Net 7 joining us as well. So I'm just going to finish making my point here, and then we'll bring these guys on. Essentially, what this means for the West, though, is that, yes, it is terrible what the Kremlin has done to Navalny. Navalny obviously has a lot of popular support. Would Navalny be better in the grand scheme of things towards democratization? Perhaps in the short run. Would he also make the system, the apparatus of power in Russia more efficient, less stagnant, less corrupt? Absolutely. If he were then to be removed from power, we'd be dealing with a more formidable opponent, not to mention the fact that, as I said, even if he were to replace Putin, which he won't, but if he were, Russia would actually be a bigger threat. They'd be better at fighting us. They'd be more competent. They'd have a better economy, less corruption, less bribes. And we don't want that. I mean, it's in the West's interest to have a weak Russia until Russia is made into a Western satellite, essentially, until they're just like the United Kingdom, until they're just like Australia. Then get rid of all the corruption and everything, have a democracy, and have them be Western hegemonized. But so we got the Politicrat joining. Welcome to the show. We also have Net 7. I'm just going to remove the Hawk selfie. Okay, so there's these guys.
How are you doing today, Kevin?
I'm pretty tired. I'm not going to be going too long tonight. I did 7 hours of streaming the other night. How are you?
Do you hear me all right? I don't know. I'm trying to get close to
I can hear you. Yeah.
I actually might go back to a avatar because my camera is not very good on here. But
it's all right. I think you're operating at the same 720p that's
hold on. Actually, yeah.
StreamYard caps me at any. How's it going?
Oh, it's going all right. What about crap, what's going on here? Hold on, I'm gonna remove myself from the stream real quick and I'll be right back.
Okay. Well, we got Net 7 here as well. How's it going?
I'm doing good. I have to say, Politicrat's little pipe was based.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I like pipes. No, that looks pretty classy and everything. So I was just basically catching up the audience on what's been going on in Russia and, debunking the meme that Alexei Navalny is like a CIA ghoul, that it's just a color revolution like all the tankies have been saying. I'm like, why would the CIA put a guy in there that wants to make Russia stronger and less corrupt? Like, I don't really get that personally. I think that my view on this, though, is that the West should lend support to the protesters. I want to be clear about something here. I want a color revolution in Russia. Alexei Navalny is not a color revolution in Russia. He's a Russian nationalist that wants to make Russia a stronger rival, essentially. That's my view of it, at least. I wish that there would be a color revolution like Georgia or Ukraine or any of this kind of stuff that'd be based. But Alexei Navalny's not pro-US, so.
Well, we obviously need to support, the freedom of speech and democracy in Russia. I mean, it's unfortunate to see more critics get arrested, but again, like you've talked about before, Russia is extremely dangerous for journalists, anyone criticizing poison Putin. And
no, absolutely. I get that. I was just making the point earlier before you guys came on, essentially, that even if Navalny were to become the leader of Russia tomorrow, they would still be aiming thousands of nukes at us, and they'd be less corrupt and more effective at opposing us. That was my only point.
So I've actually had this conversation. So I feel like, Kevin, I'm going to anticipate that you're going to disagree with me straight up here. But I have, so I didn't think this way until I actually started talking to several Russian immigrants, some of which actually moved relatively recently because of the Putin regime there.
Yeah.
But so I asked them. So I used to be under the impression, I even did a final report for it, like a presentation in front of the whole class a couple of years ago in college, in international relations, because my background was political science, like yours.
Yeah.
And the presentation was my arguing why Russia under Putin is an empire on the rise. However, I no longer have that perspective. More or less, especially again after doing some more research, various authors and sources, and actually talking firsthand to not only people who are in the like sort of the because I live in the DC area, so I actually like I've talked to like the professor actually was actually in I don't know what group it was, but he was actually like in this particular like foreign policy group. I don't know if it was like some kind of club or I forget how he described it, but same one John Bolton's in, so he knew John Bolton.
Oh, okay.
But he was a.
Wait, are you talking about the Hamilton
maybe
group?
I think so. No, but it was a they disagree a lot. He's a offshore balancer, so offshore balance defensive realist.
Yeah, see, I personally despise defensive realism. I think this defensive realism is the most morally abject,
worse than isolationism,
nihilist. Well, it is isolationism essentially. Like to me, that is isolationism. Like you gotta remember, I'm the guy who wants to nuke North Korea, right? So yeah,
I know. I just think that like, we need to like. I mean, at least on. I mean, I know this is your show. I just want to say maybe this is where the differences maybe in how our philosophies are. Like on my stream, when I use like specific terms, I use it in sort of the general sense. How in the realm of political science, it would be used. I try not to use colloquials. So I guess maybe that's why we have the different idea of what would be isolationist or not. Because when I say isolationist, I mean I specifically refer to strictly non-interventionist, no overseas military presence whatsoever. Also, no free trade. That when I hear isolate, and also no interact. That when I think of isolationism, that's what I think. So
see Switzerland to me is isolationist, even though they trade with North Korea. They refuse to fight. They refuse to do anything. Like to me, to me, if you're not willing to conduct offensive preemptive wars, essentially, in my view, you might as well just be an isolationist. You're basically useless at that point.
Well, for me, it's like I'm not necessarily against preemptive war. Okay. However, I don't think. I mean, because there's always going to be a scenario in which that is justified, because the world is way more complicated than we need to always everything's going to be fine if we just don't interfere or if we don't get involved. For instance, like let's say, and this is where I disagree from a lot of like anti-war ANCAPs, and like I said, I mostly float around in libertarian circles, so this is like big source of contention. So a lot of them are, they say only if we are physically, directly, and like attacked violently, that's the only time where we should go to war. So we should wait till they attack first. It's like, okay, however, no, but this is the thing though. It's like, okay, but what if there is a country that is trying to undermine you? Because basically, these days, countries playing the long game. That's how you win. So let's say you have China. China starts destabilizing. Like they're already doing that with Venezuela. They're basically bankrolling Venezuela right now. But let's say they start destabilizing some of the little Caribbean countries right there, and through their intelligence spies, that sort of thing. I'm not going to go into detail why that's not really the point. And then you also have them mobilizing. They make some kind of alliance with Venezuela. They mobilize troops. They start setting up bases there. And then let's say they even manage to get this is a crazy thing. But let's say they even manage to get their guy in as president of Mexico. It's like, come on. At that point, it is obvious what China is trying to do. It's only a matter of time. in
Yeah,
that
I
situation,
don't.
but then you have ANCAPs who are like, no, but
Yeah.
that's
Well,
not
those
fair.
people
It's
are
like,
lost. Those people aren't worth taking seriously at all. Like, I don't have serious conversations with ANCAPs. I just clown on them. They're not people that in any way
oh, you'd
have
like,
any
okay, so
serious.
basically you'd like Mazizi in Chicago. Oh no, you were on with him the other night, the paleo libertarian, because he's
Yeah.
interesting because he doesn't want to get rid of the state. He wants to privatize the state, and then he wants to like use, basically he wants to build large armies and like and conquer parts of the world.
Yeah, see,
He's
that's
pro-war.
what
He's
Machiavelli
he's like an
warned
ANCAP
about.
imperialist. He
Yeah,
doesn't like the
see,
term anarchist though.
no. That's the kind of stuff that Machiavelli warned about like 600 years ago. We got Henry joining us right now, but Machiavelli said, I mean, mercenaries, privatization, that kind of attitude to security is the death of nations, because in peacetime, they will command a premium, and in wartime, they will run for the hills. Machiavelli was a strong supporter of a national sensibility.
I'd argue he was the
a
first.
standing
I'd
army.
argue he was the first nationalist in terms of advocating for a united Italian identity.
Modern nationalist conception. I mean, yeah. I mean, as we would think
Proto-nationalist,
of
maybe.
as a nation state of sorts.
Yeah.
That goes back
I don't mean
before
nationalist in like the romanticist sense. I mean it more so in like the sovereign nation state, united Italy.
Yeah. No,
Same with Henry VIII. He'd be.
I'm a big fan of Machiavelli. Like, I'm a big supporter of patriotism. I'm a big supporter of having a national.
I know you and I both are fan of like the Westphalian order. So,
Uh,
are you not pro Westphalian? I thought you were.
Oh man, no, that's a good one. We got Henry
No,
joining
I'm fucking with you. I know you don't. You're not actually. No, but either way, let me.
I ain't Tulsi Gabbard, man.
I'll wrap up my point. But so after talking to these various people, these various national security experts, immigrants from Russia, some of whom grew up in the USSR, in addition to just additional reading, I've determined, and so I've also been told that Russia is actually not a rising power, but right now it is a wounded beast. Now, just wounded beasts, mind you, are very often, they're dying, but in those last moments, they are often more vicious than the non-wounded animal. If that makes sense.
I disagree.
No, but listen. Okay, so this is the point I'm coming to. So more or less, we're faced at a Putin. With the rise of Putin, we're not so much seeing the rise of a new Russian, like stable Russian order, because things aren't particularly stable. Putin's the only thing that's actually keeping the entire system running. He's the only person who's keeping it together. It's more of like the guise of renewal as opposed to a legitimate Russian renaissance. Because the thing is, if Putin does not select a successor that is as strong and as ruthless as him, I don't like Putin.
He's not ever going to select a successor. Let's just be clear about that. Putin is a very smart dude. Look, if I was Putin and I wanted to ensure my legacy and everything, and I had all the knowledge of the KGB and everything, I would have already said very explicitly, like, one of my daughters is taking over when I'm gone, and they will continue my vision. He doesn't care what happens after he dies. He's just a nihilist. Like, he doesn't care about Russia. He just cares about the here and now. He cares about his fucking swag yacht.
Well, that's not the point. That's not the point I'm trying to make. I'm talking about Russia as a whole. So, I mean, I'm just saying, if Russia, or the only way for Russia to at least maintain the quote unquote stability that it has now, I wouldn't necessarily call it stability, but it's more so of a it's more so of a, I'm trying to find the right word, but I'll use stability for the lack of a better word. It's not it's not stable in the same sense as like a healthy. It's not healthy, but it is stable. But for the only way for it to maintain that stability would be more or less if the person who came after Putin was similar to Putin and as strong of a leader as Putin. However, however, if that does not happen, we risk within 50 to 100 years, watching Russia become the world's very first failed nuclear state. And frankly, I find that absolutely terrifying.
But that's not true. Pakistan is already the world's first failed nuclear state. And they are so failed to the extent that they can't even exert their own sovereignty.
Okay, maybe a better way to say it, the world's first failed nuclear superpower.
Yeah, I would disagree with that assessment by and large. One, I don't think it's going to happen. Two, I've said before, yes, is Russia on decline? Yes, based on current trends on demographics. But, and this is a point that often gets overlooked, I'm one of the biggest skeptics of anthropogenic global warming out there. I think the extent to which humans influence the climate is vastly overstated, by and large, for Russian means, so that we don't drill oil over here, so that they can have all the market. But no, here's the thing. I let you talk. Here's the deal.
Okay.
Here's the deal. Russia going forward will have a more arable climate.
That is exactly the point I was going to make next.
And they will, in the long run, become ascendant again, economically speaking, even if not necessarily demographically.
Breadbasket. Siberia is going to be a breadbasket.
And, well, not just that, a lot of Northern European Russia as well. The point that I have here is that Russia is our greatest enemy at the moment.
Really?
China will become our greatest enemy down the road.
I don't know. I see Russia like a boot. I see Russia definitely dangerous, but I see them as kind of more of a boogeyman right now.
No. China has not interfered in the West, such as France, the United Kingdom, the United States, in our elections.
Russia's more of a short-term threat. China's the long-term.
No, I disagrey. I disagree. I think China is a medium-run threat that will inevitably. Oh, we lost that 7.
We should have let them. I should have let them talk. I'm sorry.
He says, "I'm going to bow out tonight, guys. Have a good conversation." Yeah, well, we appreciate Net 7 coming on here, but yeah, I think he really realized that this might become a shit show, and I
don't think it's going to be a shit show. I think
anyway,
we're respectfully disagreeing.
What I would say about Russia, okay, I'm going to let Henry speak in a moment, but what I would say about
anything to say.
Okay. Yeah, what I would say about Russia essentially is this, which is that Russia has proven themselves to be the largest menace towards the West. I mean, they've used weapons of mass destruction on British soil. They've literally hacked 30 states' voter registrations in 2016. They admitted to supporting Donald Trump, for example. They have interfered in the United Kingdom's sovereign elections. They've interfered in the French sovereign elections. They basically own Germany. They are our chief
How do they own Germany?
I will say this just before.
How do they own Germany?
Just before I conclude, even if Navalny takes over, and again, I want to get to the point about what the West should do with respect to these protests. But even if Navalny took over, what would he be? He'd be a Russian nationalist that would stamp out corruption and make Russia a more formidable and competent opponent to us that's still aiming 8,000 nukes at us. So this idea that he's CIA is fucking bullshit. Why would the CIA send a guy who wants to make Russia stronger?
Do people actually think that?
Yeah, tankies. I got into them
Jesus
today.
Christ.
They're fucking retarded, dude.
Like
anyway,
what?
we got Kanzik coming
on. What's up, Kanzuk?
Kanzik's here.
Kanzuk. That's a good pronunciation.
Sorry, I didn't know.
It's like
I'm doing good. You know, you guys were talking about which is the bigger threat, Russia or China. So I felt I might want to chime in.
Yeah. So we got Henry here as well. Like I said, we're not going to go particularly long. I streamed almost 8 hours last night. So
yeah, no, it was funny because I was rewatching the stream that I was on later on, and you said multiple times throughout the entire thing for the first 45 minutes. It's just going to be a very short stream.
Yeah,
I was just on a 3-hour, 20-minute stream, but then your stream about my stream ended up being longer than my stream, which is what your stream was about.
Yeah, that's correct as well. But we talked about other stuff as well. I just title whatever I think it's going to be about before I go live, right? So that we'll get to Kanzik. On the point about Russia, though, I often find that those who argue that Russia isn't a serious threat, those
it's not serious.
Those tend to be people that are sympathetic towards Putin's agenda and just want to focus on China. Whereas for me, I've always been the one that says, look, the Nixon thing of using China against the Soviets worked back then. We can't do the same now because Russia and China are both equally our enemies. So, but we got Kanzik here. So how's it going tonight?
I'm good. I thought I was going to go to bed early, but I'm just going to stay up late again.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah.
It's like my second all night. I pulled an all-nighter last night. I'm doing it again tonight, I guess.
Oh man. Yeah. So we got Henry too. Henry, what do you make of Navalny in general?
Navalny, the Russian guy.
Yeah.
I don't fucking know, man. You sent me a link to this, so I joined. Yeah, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. I was having fun listening to you guys argue. Honestly, that's pretty good. Do you guys have like a beef? Has this been going on a while or something?
Not at all.
No, well, like he's a libertarian defensive realist, and I'm neocon offensive realist, so it's pretty.
But the thing is, I'm basically the most hawkish you could be, and still be a libertarian, I guess.
But why still be a libertarian?
Libertarian is bizarre.
I don't identify with the label. Again, like I just happen to float around in those circles because I guess in terms of most policies,
like domestically, you're libertarian leaning, but
yeah, and then I'm definitely for like I'm definitely for global empire. However, I think that there are other means upon which we can predicate empire other than strict like sending a bunch like all these troops to occupy these different areas. I think that there are more pragmatic ways in order to go about doing that. But we're actually going to be having. That's actually I forgot to tell you, Kevin. I'm actually planning on. I'm sort of like organizing. Or been taking notes for a potential stream that we can do on that. Remember we were talking about last time?
I know, because I was arguing that America's not an imperial power.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what do you mean by global empire? Like, what are you talking about?
I don't want to get into this again tonight.
No, it's worth noting because the idea of America as an empire is foreign to basically everybody here, right? Because we always.
I used to have a channel called American.
Well, no, that's true, but
that was literally my last channel.
But like that's kind of.
Wait, did you get your YouTube channel? Did your last YouTube? Did you get banned?
Oh no, once I get tired of them, I just kind of delete them. So
why is that? Oh, it's surprising. But either way, with regards to Russia. That your point about the climate change in the arable land in northern Russia, and that being a potential way to sort of see a Russia resurgent within the next 100 years or so. That is actually a very good point and was something that I was going to bring up. And that is what I was going to say, the one instance in which I could see sort of a Russian comeback. It's going to take quite a number of decades, sure, but I mean I guess that is still a long-term threat in the end.
But if this is their down point,
and why do you think they're funding global warming denial? Like the Kremlin is actually funding
Well, no, they do the reverse. They fund the global warming memes so that we don't drill oil and gas, so that they can have the full market to themselves, right? Like they cheer on when Biden canceled the Keystone pipeline. They'll cheer on when the Trans-Canada pipeline gets, if that gets canceled. They'll cheer on that we're not going to try to get Europe off of dependence on Russian oil. I mean, there's a reason why they hype up the green parties. It's so that we don't invest in natural gas and oil.
I thought it was just because because third parties and they think that it's just going to cause.
Well, no.
I think they just want to cause as much chaos as possible.
No, they have a special relationship with the Green Party because they promote the idea that our oil interests.
Jill Stein.
What?
Like Jill Stein, wasn't she like?
Well, she had dinner with Vladimir Putin. The point is, why would a far right fascist petrol state be such a fan of the environmental?
I don't think Russia's.
Oh, that's right. No,
Russia's not far left or far right. Russia's just.
No, here's the problem. No, they used
have
to
an
be
ideology.
far left. They used to be far left. They swapped out communism for fascism like 30 years ago.
I'd say monarchism. Why?
They're not. How are they a monarch? Wait, what?
No. Okay, more or less in practice. You see, the establishment.
They don't have a hereditary line.
No, they don't. But in practice, it is functioning more or less in a similar way to how the Romanov dynasty or Romanov Empire did. In terms of the system, you have the autocratic leader. I don't see how Russia you could consider it. I mean, if you're using fascism as a colloquial for just authoritarian, but
they're literally a fascist system. They're a republican system. They're not a monarchy. Let's be very clear about that. There is no hereditary line of succession. There is no claim of divine right of kings. There is no understanding of absolutism in the sense that we would think of with the Romanovs.
Okay, fair enough.
There's I mean, the social contract, the system that exists in Russia is a Republican federation that's essentially what we would think of colloquially as an oligarchy. It's essentially 3,000 families that control all of the economy.
And many of them are former Soviet ministers too.
Well, that's correct. But I want to get back to the point that I was going to make, though, which is that you basically said that the Kremlin hypes up the idea that global warming isn't anthropogenic, but that's just patently not true. They oppose those voices because those voices support us drilling oil, and they hate that. That's why they hype up the anthropogenic global warming.
Okay, I think I misunderstood then what you were saying, because I heard the opposite, but either way, basically,
they don't want us to
kind of funny
oil.
Is we both ended up coming. Either
they
way,
don't
we
want
both
us
ended,
to compete
we both
with
ended
them
up coming
on
to the
oil
same
and gas.
conclusion.
They don't want us to compete with them on oil and gas because 65 to 66% of their government revenue each year literally comes from the export of fossil fuels. So if we're doing that as well, it's going to increase supply and lower the price. It's obviously more expensive for them to produce it. They would go bankrupt. They would come for Putin's head on a platter if he couldn't put the lights and pay the pensions. Like, it's as simple as that. That's why they hate the Green Party, so that we don't compete on fossil fuels.
Yeah, I think we're getting a little bit too much into the weeds for that particular point, because all the main point I was just trying to make was with the arable land that is more or less going to come, their access to wider oil reserves in the long run. That was the point I was trying to make, but you and I just ended up reaching that same conclusion through different means, and you might very well be right. Yours might very well be correct, but either way,
my point is that they're going to be an enemy regardless of who's in charge, unless it's a Western agent, essentially, at this point. So that's my.
I had an interesting, fun question, Kevin.
Yeah.
Do you think it would have been better for Russia, for the world? Do you think it would have been better if the Romanovs had stayed in power?
100%.
I've made this point. I've made it. Yo, he was asking me this question.
I know.
Dude.
I just wanted to.
I'm gonna actually have to mute. So we've got.
He mute himself.
Yeah, no, that's big boomer cast. No, dude, I got muted by this guy like 6 or 7 times last night on his stream when Outreamer and I were arguing. It
sounded like you guys were agreeing on this, though.
Well, I couldn't. Well, I'm like, yo, Kevin, what do you think about this? And he's like, yo, I think. And I'm like, no, dude. Okay, we'll unmute you shortly. I'm going to give my answer first, which is that I've talked about this, and I should do a full video premiering on this, which is that the West not offering adequate support. And before anybody asks me, like, oh, the West did support the whites, it's like, yeah, sending a few hundred troops over there with no plan and landing 6,000 kilometers away from where the fighting wasn't really support. I know the West did slightly more than that. No, if the West went full out and actually defended the whites and preserved, if not the Romanovs as the institution, at least the government that emerged, the provisional government afterwards. If the West had lent full support to the whites during the Civil War, 100 million Chinese people would still be alive. Communism would have never butchered Asia. The Cold War never would have happened. Russia today would look like the United Kingdom. The world would be a very different and more prosperous place with a constitutional monarchy in Russia. I mean, the Romanovs were really... They were, the last hope against the communists, and the West dropped the ball big time because we didn't think that the Bolsheviks were a really serious long-term threat. So I would have lent full support, just as I support the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, for example. You know, they're a massive bulwark against Islamism and Iran, for example. So that's my answer.
Yeah, so, it's a really interesting alternative history question. Have to send that one to Alternative History Hub. It'll be fun.
Yeah, no, the Politicrat said in the private chat, literally the great white hope.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
The great white hope. Donald Trump, what do you think of the great white hope? Are you a man?
Yeah, no, Tsar Nicholas II, he was the great white hope, and the West let him down.
Really, the whites.
They were the whites. Yeah, that's right. The white Russians, yeah.
How do you feel about that, Politicrat, the keeping the Romanovs in power?
100%. I am actually unironically... I in terms of, so I have this thing where.
Oh.
Did you mute him again, Kevin? What the hell?
I didn't mute him. He muted himself. Wait, he didn't mute himself.
It doesn't say he's muted.
No, he's not muted. What the? Okay, maybe it's an internet.
Oh, it was the Biden administration got him. That's what it was.
No, the KGB got him. They
KGB.
meddled with him. They don't
Yeah,
want
the KGB using fucking Soviet time travel just travel to the stream.
Well, no, I
Wednesday.
call the FSB the KGB because there's no functional difference between the two. Like, it's literally just the successor.
Oh, no, I totally understand that.
Like, and it's good optics too. People don't know what an FSB is. Everybody hates the KGB, so you know.
Well, that fucking sucks.
Well, that sucks. Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
what was the? You were talking about. I saw the title of this was about the protests in Russia. So what's the deal with that?
Yeah. So basically, Navalny, after being poisoned, he finally returned to Russia, and as we would all fully predict, the second he arrived, they arrested him. Like the second he got off the train, they arrested him. Of course, it's Russia. That's what they always do for hundreds of years. That's what happens. There were a lot of big protests that emerged in the wake of that. 3,500 people were arrested. Navalny himself has a YouTube channel. He's got like 6 million subscribers. He's got like, you know, some of his videos get like upwards of 100 million views. He's a big voice. They can't just necessarily outright simply kill him. They know that his brand is still going to be a movement, but they'll do stuff to intimidate him and maybe it kills him. They don't really necessarily care per se, like with the poisoning. It's more to send a message. The thing with Navalny, though, and my point that I was going to get to was what the West should do about the protests. The West should support the democratization of Russia, but I want to be clear here about something. We shouldn't fool ourselves, and the Politicrats are turning right now, but we shouldn't fool ourselves into thinking that everything would be better if Navalny was in charge. It's like, no, Navalny wants to make Russia not corrupt. What would it mean if Russia was less corrupt? They'd be more effective at invading Europe, bombing Syria, and threatening the West. They'd just be a more cohesive and effective fighting force. People say, like I had some alt-right guy in the chat earlier, he said, without Putin, Russia would be a weak country. The irony is, with Putin, they're incredibly weak, degenerate, and incapable of rendering a very significant conventional force anywhere. I mean, their aircraft carrier is a disaster. If you had 10 years of Alexei Navalny in charge, they would be a very formidable army again, probably. They would probably have a better, less corrupt economy so that they could manage a better navy, and they'd be making moves in Europe. They'd be making moves in the Middle East in ways that Putin couldn't necessarily dream of. And yeah, they'd still be aiming like upwards of 8,000 nukes at us. So that's why I just want to say, you know, he's not like this godsend, and he's not CIA. He's not a CIA plant. It's not a color revolution. I wish it was a color revolution. I support a color revolution in Russia. Alexei Navalny, he's not it. He's a Russian nationalist. But there's the Politicrat. So Politicrat, there we go.
Yeah, no, I remember I literally started answering Henry's question, and my computer shut off. I don't know. I think I had to update it or something. But yeah, no, but I was saying, you asked me what I think about a restored or Russian monarchy. I actually quite like that idea. And while this would not be ideal, I would, like, comparatively speaking, if Putin started a new Russian Tsar dynasty, like 100%, and just went all out, that would be preferable to whatever the fuck Russia is right now.
He wouldn't bring back. He wouldn't do it though, because why would he give up power?
He wouldn't. No. I mean, I'm saying that tongue in cheek.
Yeah, but why would that be? Like, you're a libertarian, right? So, like, why would you want that?
I'm not a libertarian. I just happen to like float around in those circles. That's sort of where I consider myself more of like a political realist in sort of the Machiavellian tradition. James Burnham, maybe a little less socially conservative, but
wait, if I recall correctly, though, didn't you advocate for privatizing the American military to like mercenaries? No. Yeah, what you were saying earlier sounded. No, I remember you saying that what you wanted to do was basically cut back the military. You wanted to have it essentially become. I forget exactly the words that you were using, but last night on the stream.
Oh, I think you misunderstood what I was saying. I was talking about other countries more or less coming into a contract with the United States, and then their militaries more or less being auxiliaries of the United States military, sort of in this kind of unified imperial fashion, similar to how back during the British Empire, you would have the colonial forces too. So you would have the British Arab Legion, for instance, Glub Pasha, who commanded the British Arab Legion back from, I think, 1937 to 1956 until he was dismissed by the King of Jordan. But so there was, like, for instance, the British Arab Legion. It was the main army of sort of the Jordanian Mandate. And then after the Jordanian Mandate, after they decided to leave the British Empire, what were the colonial auxiliary forces comprised of almost all Arabs, with an exception of the British commanders who actually still stayed on loan after Jordan left the Mandate, like Glub himself. But after Jordan left the Mandate, and the Mandate was eventually dissolved very shortly thereafter, then what was the British Arab Legion became the Royal Arab Legion, the main, or the precursor to the modern Jordanian army. So that's more or less what I'm talking about. So, like, in order to kind of create this sort of voluntary network of clients that more or less, does that make, that's what I was talking about.
You'll never win if everything's voluntary, though. That's the problem, is because your enemies are going to go in there and involuntarily take their clients. So we have to counter them and contain them at every turn. That's not like, oh, you can opt in or you can opt out. Like, I supported the coups, for example, in Italy and Greece back during the Cold War, for example, because it's like, oh, we can't have states that are going to be sympathetic to the Soviet Union voluntarily.
That's why we needed to get Allende out of Chile.
Allende was a joke. Like I've said before, that I would, like,
100% justified. I would do it 10 times over again. And the thing is, that's why what's hilarious is, this is something I thought was really funny. So Bernie Sanders fucking hates Henry Kissinger. Like, he hates Henry Kissinger so much. Like, when Mike Pompeo had a meeting with Henry Kissinger, Bernie Sanders criticized Mike Pompeo for meeting with Henry Kissinger. That makes no sense, especially because
Kissinger is a bit of a mixed bag, though, right?
No, like, but I'm saying, how is, I don't see how Henry Kissinger is more controversial than Mike Pompeo. Now, I know you probably you are more in the Mike Pompeo camp.
Mike Pompeo became a bootlicker for Trump.
I just mean it. Theoretically speaking,
he doesn't have a theory. He just knows how to dust the portraits of Trump, though.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying that, in terms of the hawkish, the level of hawkishness.
He's not hawkish. How is he hawkish? How is he hawkish? He literally wanted to bring down Trump from doing anything against Iran. Like, we followed that.
No, I thought, okay, maybe I could be wrong because I haven't followed Iran in a while, but it was my understanding that he was one of the ones who was in support of ultimately going into Iran, and that's where he and Bolton were more or less aligned. I could be confusing people.
That's not true. With Mike Pompeo, he wanted a strong rhetorical stance. He wanted to counter them in Iraq and everything. But when his instincts were considering actually going in there fairly recently, it was basically Pompeo and a few others around Trump that were left that talked him out of it, just as Tucker talked him out of it before.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I thought it was Pompeo. Yeah, that's what I thought. I was about to say that because
not a hawkish guy. Like, he's just not. He's solely concerned. He's kind of like an H.W. Bush type figure, almost. Like, he's not actually about the going in and taking out the regime.
More of an offensive, more of just like a basic bitch offensive realist, maybe.
Well, he's not an offensive realist. There's nothing offensive realist about him. I mean, and there was nothing offensive realist about Bush either. He was a defensive guy. I mean, like, if you're using Mearsheimer's specific definition of offensive realism, you have to keep in mind that Mearsheimer is kind of a joke. Mearsheimer himself, even his own definition. I mean, I talked about this with McCarthyists before we had our feud.
I know McCarthyists hate. Yeah, he hated Mearsheimer, right? With
freaking Mearsheimer is so isolationist that even what he thinks of as offensive realism-ish is still milquetoast. Like, it's not what I conceive of actual offensive realism, and so he limited his potential. He didn't think outside the box enough.
Let me get back to what I was saying real quick about. Let me finish up wrapping up what I was saying about Sanders, because I have no idea. Because historically speaking, if you are to compare Mike Pompeo's tenure as Secretary of State, right? Yeah.
Mike Pompeo was Mike
he was
Pompeo
CIA before. He was CIA beforehand, and I'm trying to remember.
Mike Pompeo. The thing about Mike Pompeo is, he was the former director.
Well, no, but no, I mean, I'm trying. I don't think it. Yeah, but so what's funny is, so comparatively speaking, if you were to compare, so Bernie Sanders likens himself to a non-interventionist. I mean, I know he's not. I don't think it's necessarily that he's anti-war. I think he's just anti-American.
He's anti-West.
He's anti-West.
He's fine with Russia invading Crimea.
Exactly. So that's basically what his stance is. So he claims to basically be more on the quote unquote non-interventionist side of things. Yet he ended up criticizing Mike Pompeo, who in theory, or even in practice, was more hawkish in comparison to Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger, by default, is one of the most dovish secretaries of state, for the lack of a better term, since the Coolidge administration.
Oh yeah, no, I know.
But the thing is, Sanders criticized Mike Pompeo for meeting with Bernie Sanders, who thinks he's a dove, criticized somebody who is traditionally viewed. Let me finish, please.
It's not just about that, though. It's because Kissinger endorsed genocides in, say, for example,
I think Bernie is just salty about Chile. That's all I think it is.
Yeah, but Kissinger, on the whole, is kind of a goofy guy. Like, I wanted to debate Ian Stevens about this because he's a big
Stevens.
Yeah, even Stevens. He even agreed to do the debate, and then he backed out once he realized, like, oh shit, this is going to make me. I'm going to lose, and now he's had me blocked for the third time now. He refuses to debate.
I don't like people who block people. I don't block anyone.
I don't block people anymore. I used to.
He blocked him like 3 different times, and this day still subtweets him.
Oh, absolutely. He still talks shit about me all the time, but he has time to watch my stuff and everything. He doesn't have time to debate, though. He doesn't have his school computer. No, anyway.
I wish I was so popular that it's hard to get people to like actually watch my stream. Like, I mean, I wish I had so many people who watch my stream that I had some people who hate watched.
Oh, it'll happen.
I used to hate watch.
You just have to keep making consistent content. I mean, if you do videos every day for a year, you will have people that watch your show out of joy, and you'll have people that watch your show out of rage. That's what we have here. And yeah, we're just starting out, but we already have that, and we're not going anywhere, right? So
we should bring Outsider on.
Who?
Oh, Outside. No, that. You don't know him as Outsider. You know him as Coronas.
Oh, that guy's a piece of shit. That guy's obsessed with me. Kanzik can attest to this. This guy.
Yeah, he's a piece of shit. He's a piece of shit. He can he can go die in a hole. He can have his dick chewed off by a wolf.
Yeah, he's a.
He was literally trying to defend pornography as a net positive.
Oh, Coronas is. Here's the thing about Coronas.
Coronas actually told me. So I personally like Coronas.
He's a moral relativist. He defends Iran. So he's a supporter.
Yeah, I've never seen him.
No. You haven't interacted with him to the extent that I have. Okay, if you were to look at all the fucking comments that I've had on this show for the last week since the feud with McCarthy this guy's basically a bootlicker to McCarthy.
Basically, I told them that I told this to them because they invited me to their little secret Discord server where they plan raids. Yeah, no, the neoliberal empire is what they call it.
Of course they do. Of course they do.
Yeah, so
I guess I'm supposed to be triggered. I guess I'm supposed to be fucking triggered by that.
So yeah, I'm in the neoliberal empire, and I literally told it because they were just like talking about how hilarious it was, and I basically said, "You guys are like Tweedledee and Tweedledum."
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, and then you've got Tweedledumfuck, who's Richard, who's simping both of them.
Tweedledumfuck, the third forgotten retarded triplet.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, the thing is, the only difference is that at least Richard is just a simp and he doesn't know anything. These guys are actually serious in their contempt for the working people of America.
They seem like a comedy duo for foreign policy. Like
well,
it seems like
they
Bob
are
Hope and Bing Crosby.
They are the best advertisement for Karl Marx I've ever seen. Like, I mean, I can't think of a better way than to turn young people into communists than let them watch these guys bullshit for 2 hours about how the workers deserve to be oppressed and how we should deprive them of their rights.
No, okay, so I'm gonna defend I keep wanting to call him outsider because that's what I know him as, but Coronis here for a second, because I've never seen him
Oh, so you haven't seen his comments recently, then?
Maybe not. Like I haven't
He's
I haven't
obsessed.
Comments recently. Look at all of the recent uploads on this channel, the last 14 uploads. Look at who was always first to comment, and he's just bitching about me every single time, calling me hashtag cornlaws Kevin and mercantilist Castley, as if that's supposed to be an insult. No, the guy's a joke. The guy's a fucking clown. But like, and here's the other thing.
But I was about to say, I don't think
on numerous occasions. I said before on numerous occasions, and this also applies.
He doesn't believe in he's not a Marxist.
This also applies to McCarthyists. This also applies to McCarthyists, which is that they're all welcome to come on here. They can shoot me a DM, and we can schedule a debate. It's funny how when he replied to me today, McCarthyist, I had tweeted it basically he had responded to one of my quote tweets, basically highlighting how he was full of shit, and he addressed every point in there to try to like dunk on me, except he ignored the point about, and he can come on here and debate if he wants to. You know why? Because the guy's scared. The boy's scared. He came on here to debate once when it was a cordial discussion where we had some minutia of difference on handling Turkey. He's not actually going to come on here and debate me about should we oppress the working people, because he knows he would freaking lose.
I will say, I will say, if you guys ever do want to have that debate, whether it's on,
well, he doesn't want to. I want to have a debate.
No, I just mean hypothetically, since I'm friends with both of you guys, I'd be willing to potentially, in the odd chance it happens, potentially moderate.
Okay, yeah, maybe we could do that. I don't think that debate would happen, though.
Probably not. I'll just putting that out there.
Yeah, he's dodging it. He's not interested in actually having a debate.
Okay.
He's not. He's simply not. He's got all the time in the world to spam cringe in the chat last night for 2.5 hours on your show while I was trying to listen to what you and Outringer had to say and everybody else that was there. And he's just like, oh, Kevin deserves to be poor. Kevin deserves to be oppressed.
I just got bored of their
they're a bunch of degenerate fucktards.
The thing is, I just started getting bored of their comments. The ones that were really kind of strange was Sendix Bunny, who is basically he had the bunny avatar, and he was talking about like saying like not just anti-democracy stuff, but quasi-fascist stuff. And the thing is, I have no idea why he was watching my stream. I don't think it makes very much sense, because he and I got into a spat on Twitter a couple months ago, and then as soon as he came onto my stream, he went back to Twitter and started responding to a tweet or to a reply that I had made months ago that he never even ended up replying to. I don't know why, but he claims to be a Roman Catholic, yet at the same time he does not actually accept the traditional Catholic view on the Old Testament, particularly the Genesis story. He actually he thinks it's 100% literal, and I was giving him shit for that. I'm saying, you basically sound like a fundamentalist Calvinist when you say that. And he got triggered because I basically called him a Calvinist. I said you might think you're a Roman Catholic, but you're theologically
no. But most Roman Catholics throughout history, you go back 400 years, you go back 800 years, they all believed it was literal. I mean, you don't have to be a Calvinist.
No. The concept of a literal. No, this is actually my area.
You don't have to be a Calvinist to believe that Genesis is literal. Like,
okay.
If I was to be Christian, I'd be a Calvinist.
But yeah, I know you've said that. No, I'm not talking about Calvinist. I'm talking about the Christian fundamentalism. So Fundamentalist Protestantism, which we saw the rise following the Second Great Awakening. Because, I mean, the idea of a young earth did not come about actually until Bishop James Ussher in the 17th century, who was an Anglican bishop. And the reason he ended up calculating the date to 6,000 years old is because it was actually a result of the rise of rationalism and the Enlightenment. So they began to rationalize, okay, so we can use this sort of problem solving to try to figure out how old the earth is. The Bible is currently all we have. So for the time being, we will go off of this. So mathematically calculate it. And then that's how he found out like what. So from like the 1600s until the 1800s, that was the general consensus that that's how old the earth was, because that's all they had to, that's all they had to go off of.
What I'm going to say here, because we're running out of time,
okay.
I'm going
we can
to
have this conversation another time, maybe off air.
So I'm going to actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my concluding remarks about what I think about the actual significance of this and why the West isn't actually going to do a color revolution in Russia. I am going to, for the sake of brevity here, because we have to wrap this up, I'm going to actually mute everybody at the moment right now so that I can get through this final segment. And then we'll go to everybody for their closing remarks, and then we'll go off air because I have to be up early tomorrow for work. So what I'm going to say is that there's a reason why color revolution will not actually be promoted, despite what the tankies would have to say in Russia, which is that the West is spooked by them having 8,000 nukes. And the message here, the moral here, is that when people say, oh, well, you know, North Korea, you don't understand, man. They want nukes because they see that when you've got a lot of nukes, people don't mess with you. That's actually true. That's true. I'm not on their side. I don't sympathize with them. When people say Kim wants nukes because he feels scared by America, I'm like, good. I'm not on his side. I want to vaporize his feelings. Like, I want to kill him, you know? He's an enemy of everything that I stand for. Likewise with Russia, the moral isn't, oh, they want a bunch of nukes so that people can't mess with them. The moral is, we understand why they want them. Let's never let any other country get in that position again. Deal with them before they ever get anywhere near close to what Russia has. Because think about it. If Russia didn't have any nuclear weapons, it would be very easy to subvert them. It would be very easy to bring them under American hegemony. At this point, it's very difficult to do because despite their military, by and large, being rinky-dinky and rusty-dusty, and their economy incredibly stagnant and corrupt, and they're essentially their system just awash in this elitist oligarchy that's incapable of advancing. What we have is we still can't do anything, and the West won't pursue a color revolution because the West is worried that it might spark a nuclear war. And there's some reasonable caution there that does make some sense. And the moral of the story isn't, oh, therefore we understand why North Korea wants nukes and it's okay and Iran should have nukes too. No, the moral of the story is America should have done Operation Unthinkable and nuked the USSR probably in 1948, and we never would have had a Cold War. We never would have had communism in China. The Korean War never would have happened. Russia would be essentially a free country today. You know, and of course, the lesson going further back from that is we sided with the Tsar. They'd look like the United Kingdom today. They'd be rich and free and prosperous and everything. And Nicholas' grandkids or great grandkids would be running Russia today instead of this thug Putin. So that's what I got to say. We're going to go to everybody for closing remarks. We're going to start with Henry, and then we'll move on from there. So we'll start with Henry. So thanks for coming on.
I didn't have any closing remarks.
Okay. Yeah, we'll go to Kanzik.
Yeah, I just wanted to close off by, like, I initially joined this stream because I wanted to comment on whether or not Russia or China was the bigger threat. And I don't think there's any easy one way to conclude which is objectively a bigger threat. Like, when you look at things like cyber security, Russia is obviously the bigger threat.
Yeah.
But in terms of economic competition, like China, it's no match. Like, China has a lot of shit that most other countries don't even have.
Yeah, but if we cut them off from the world economy, they would go bankrupt overnight. Whereas Russia, they could survive on their own, unfortunately. So we let them become a big economic power in China. We can also break them. With Russia, Russia's used
Yeah, but
to-
breaking them is so fucking hard considering how intertwined we are at this point. Like,
Well,
it's
the
not something
hard
you
part-
can just do overnight.
Yeah, but the hard part isn't actually to do with China. It's to do with our corporate establishment that don't have any sort of higher allegiance beyond their profits, and that's a problem. So that's my view, at least. Because if you had a strong government that came in and said, you guys aren't doing business with them anymore, and if you subvert this, we're going to end your company and appropriate your retained earnings. I got news. Apple wouldn't be making iPhones in China anymore. They'd be making them in India, for example. So, like, again, if corporations are going to be people, they owe their allegiance to the state just as people do. That's my view of it.
Other countries need that kind of infrastructure that China has, and a lot of them don't even have that. So, like, currently, it's not even possible.
Well, no, it's not that it's not impossible. We did it with the Marshall Plan. America took Europe from a bunch of rubble, smoldering rubble, and transformed it into a big, essentially bustling.
Well, then you got to do that with like the Asian countries, like
Vietnam. I agree.
I think we should invest in Vietnam.
No, I prefer India personally. I think Vietnam.
Yes,
no,
India.
Vietnam's
India.
a more stable country.
India is more aligned with our interests, I would argue, than Vietnam. Which Vietnam, they're just about fighting China. As soon as China's dealt with, Vietnam's going to be another enemy. Whereas with India is like a liberal democracy. They're fighting Islamism. They're fighting communism. India can basically be like the new Israel in a way. You know?
Oh, yes, 100%. Like, I have actually, plus I don't see the point in, like, when you have a choice between Vietnam and India, I don't know why you wouldn't choose India, because Vietnam's just a parochial power compared to India, which is actually on the route to be regardless of whether it has U.S. backing or not, on the path to be the next global superpower.
Vietnam, India is not a dichotomy, though.
I'm not saying it's a dichotomy.
Anyway, we can't get into a long-winded debate or anything here. Kanzik, was there anything else that you wanted to
add? Yeah, there's actually a video I don't think you should stream it here like right now, but there is a video I wanted you to watch about why Russian cyber is like so freaking good.
Okay.
And I would want to get your opinion on that.
Well, I'm a boomer. I probably wouldn't be able to comment that effectively on cyber.
Well, it basically covers how, like, starting in their middle school, they cover various things like programming and algorithms, whereas in Western schools, the kids learn how to use like Microsoft Excel and that's it.
Yeah, but like learn to code, bro, is kind of a meme. Like I have a video dropping tomorrow. I'll give you guys an inside scoop on what tomorrow's premiere is. Why don't you just learn to code, bro? Literally, why doesn't literally every worker in our entire economy just be a coder?
Okay, dude. Yeah.
No, that learn to code meme has nothing to do with it.
Guess who unironically said learn to code in the neoliberal empire?
That's McCarthy.
No, it actually wasn't McCarthy. It was other guy.
Coronis.
This, but no, I joke. I said it. I said it ironically, and then he replied to me. He says, "No, this, but unironically."
Yeah, no, that's because he's doing the.
He was so happy about the pipeline being canceled.
Oh, Coronis, yeah, that's because he's an environatter. Like he's called me a conspiracy hack before because I'm skeptical about anthropogenic global warming.
Basically, my stance on that is that global warming is natural. But what we're doing, we're speeding up a natural process. That's
very tiny extent, like a negligible extent. It doesn't matter anyway. There's no even if you said, okay, it's a bit bigger of an effect. It's like, what do you do with that? There's no reversing it, and then it's a natural process anyway. Like if humans were not here, the planet would also be getting warmer right now.
Plus, I'm not concerned because for 6,000 years of human civilization, we have adapted to countless environmental catastrophes. Ancient Sumer, they completely over-farmed, over-cultivated the region, turned the entire area into a desert. That's why Iraq is a desert today. Yeah. But then the Babylonians rose up, and they became like one of the greatest empires in ancient history. So, yeah,
no, it's a big meme. It's a big meme, and by and large, if you're one of those people who thinks, oh, What about global warming? We should not drill oil. We should not export gas and everything. No, you're just doing Putin's bidding. That's why Putin supports Greenpeace. That's why Putin supports the Green parties. It's because he wants to not go bankrupt and have the people storm the Kremlin like those guys stormed the Capitol. Except when they storm the Kremlin, they'll actually cut his head off and put it on
what's your opinion on, just real quick, on carbon pricing?
Carbon pricing? Oh, yeah. You mean like carbon taxes? I'm like one of the most vehement opponents to it. Like I'm a big supporter of Derek Sloan, for example, to be Canada's prime minister. He's a vehement opponent of carbon taxes.
Okay, because I was just asking, because you consider yourself center right, and in most parts, and what's interesting about the United States is that it is unique among other Western nations in that its right wing does not support carbon taxes, whereas in all the other Western countries, carbon tax is actually seen as the right wing policy.
Blanket statement. You got to keep in mind here, Kanzik and I, we don't regard Aaron O'Toole as very representative of any sort of center right. He's basically a liberal with a blue hat at this point and a blue tie. Like that's my standpoint.
And genocide denial.
Like people might say, oh well, you're very right wing in Canada. It's like Canada's spectrum is so far left that me being center right in Canada, like look, I support the furthest right guy in the main political spectrum, who'd be similar to John Bolton in American politics. But in Canada, he looks like super far right and everything. He's a huge supporter of Israel. He's an absolute opponent of the Nazis, all that kind of stuff.
If I were in the UK, I'd be a Tory. I mean, the Republican and Democratic parties don't align with me here.
But guess what I'm getting at here, Politicrat, and we'll wrap this up shortly. But what I'm getting at is that Canadian conservatives have a huge chasm right now.
Just vote Bernier. You just vote Maxime Bernier. Everything's going to
be clear. I wasn't referring to him. He got 1% of the vote. He's not a serious force. I'm talking about Aaron O'Toole.
Vote for Kevin O'Leary.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about Aaron O'Toole and his brand of this milk toast, basically. Be Justin Trudeau.
Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, well, I call him Trader Trudeau because he wanted to train the CCP at Petawawa, which, like their army, literally in winter combat. We did a story on that a couple days on the show. My friend Wyatt did a piece in the National Telegraph about it. It's a total embarrassment. Anyway, my point was, when you were saying, well, the right wing in these other countries, they embrace carbon pricing. It's like, yeah, tell that to the conservatives I know in Canada that hate Trudeau and are sick of Aaron O'Toole and want somebody like Derek Sloan in charge. We're not fans of carbon pricing. I mean, carbon pricing is, I mean, if you wanted to help the Russians, there are few ways, like short of literally just saying, here, you can have Newfoundland and you can have the Northwest Territories. There are few ways that Canada could help Russia more than imposing an arbitrary carbon tax. There are countries out there that have literally fought wars for oil, like Iraq. There are countries out there that have literally killed for oil, like Sudan. And yet here we are sitting on this vast amount of endowed splendor, and we do nothing with it because, that would be bad, man, because we bought into all the memes that Russia wants us to believe that, we can't drill, man. And didn't you see what the Green Party guy said on Russia Today yesterday? Said that if we drill oil, the world's going to end in 20 years. It's like, oh God, I said it before.
Remind me, people like Greta Thunberg and like the Extinction Rebellion and like the extreme,
when I'm basically when I'm on the economic standpoint here, when it comes to my policy on this, think of me essentially as Canada's Sarah Palin. Like, I would just want to drill, baby, drill. Like, let's get that oil in the ground and let's get Europe off of dependence on Russia. So,
you can see Russia from your backyard.
Well, actually, yeah, that's the thing. She now you can in Alaska, not from her place. I mean, not from her Alaska in the Diomedes, but
people took her too literally when she was. I think they're trying to find something to like.
There's a reason why they took her out of context by that, because the late night comedians, they're never going to not be disingenuous.
No, the thing is, I don't think they're being disingenuous. They're doing it for comedy. However, people are so stupid that they actually watch that as if it's real news. And then eventually the late night comics started to catch on, and then they just started going with that.
Though. They have a political bias against Republicans. Let's just be real about that.
Yeah, I mean, even Jon Stewart, who was fantastic, had a bias against Republicans.
Wait, Jon Stewart was an ISIL-cock. He opposed the war in Iraq. That guy was a joke. I don't like Jon Stewart.
You don't even think he's funny? I mean, just like ignore the politics for a bit. He's a funny guy. His show is hilarious.
Yeah, I can't really laugh at that guy anymore. When I was a tiny kid, and I would watch some of his stuff, I thought like, yeah, I actually more preferred Stephen Colbert.
Colbert's Bill O'Reilly parody. That was great.
Yeah, but I don't like
way better. Colbert was way better back then.
But my point was the late night comedy, all those people, the reason why they can never do a fair representation of conservatives is that they just hate the Republican Party and they shill for the Democratic Party. And so that's why Sarah Palin is super dumb and everything. And that's why Mitt Romney wants to start World War III with Russia. But then, the orange man's in charge. We should probably get tough on Russia. It's like, spare me their bullshit. Like, that's why I can't take MSNBC seriously, for example.
MSNBS.
That's my view on it, at least. I mean, and also Jon Stewart's like super woke too. That's another problem. Look, all those guys and the guy that took over from Trevor Noah, like all these guys, they're just not funny.
Honestly, the only one I legitimately like, also because he's actually he makes fun of conservatives, but he is actually he's more on, like, he kind of has Trump derangement syndrome, but that actually goes back way before Trump even started running or even declared or ran for president. But has conservatives on, will be honest, do honest assessment of conservatives. Still has his problems, but yeah, the only guy who I think is worth watching is Bill Maher.
Oh, Bill Maher's a joke. Hey, did you ever see him with, for example, with Bill Kristol, where he's like, "How can you still be supporting the Iraq War, man?" And we're like, "Wait,
he's become a hawk ever since Trump became president."
No, he's not. He's just got Trump derangement syndrome. He doesn't want to do anything. Like, if Mitt Romney was in charge, he'd be saying, "You're going to start World War III, man." Like, that's why I'm sick of these people where like they just flip. They just flip the second the Republicans in charge.
I mean, he's definitely more principled than the Jimmies.
No, Bill Maher. Then you mean Jimmy Dore?
No, well, I'm talking about because the Jimmies on how many Jimmies are there on the network?
You mean like
late night shows?
Jimmy Fallon, those guys? Yeah, but like those guys aren't even really to the same extent political.
No, but they turned their shows political when their shows were never. For instance, you had like Jay Leno. He was never. It was never a political show. Like he would say political things from time to time, but whereas every single monologue of like all of these late night guys now is political. They're basically political shit.
Not just political, it's Democrat hackery. That's what it is. And I don't even mean necessarily per se that it's left, even per se. A lot of it does turn out to be left, but it's just whatever the DNC
grift
supports. It's
grifting.
And some of them believe it. Yeah, but I mean, I'll say this: the biggest boon that Trevor Noah and all these guys could have had was the pandemic, because there's no live studio audience, so they can tell unfunny jokes and then just have a laugh track. Now, granted, they're doing
daily social distancing show is what it's called now.
Yeah, but the thing is, they're doing these in coastal elite cities, so even then the audience is still going to think it's funny. Like, if Trevor Noah does a live audience, you know that everybody there makes like $150,000 a year and thinks that the Orange Man is literally Hitler, for example, and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, it's
Trumpler, just Adolf Trumpler.
Yeah, see, that's the thing, and I'm not a fan of Trump.
Trump does not have the attention span to be a dictator.
Crowd, man, like the woke crowd. This is another thing that McCarthyist and I disagreed on. He doesn't care about Black Lives Matter. I view BLM as an actual threat to our security. Okay, there goes Henry. But
it was compromised by potential Russian measures.
Oh, not just potential. It's confirmed that the Russians hyped up BLM.
I think it's probably been their end game for decades. I part of me feels like this could. I'm not saying 100%. I'm certain of this. This could be sort of like the revenge of the Soviet Union. Like,
that's what Bezmenov talked about.
Bezmenov, he was talking about what does it take? It takes 25 years to subvert a culture.
Well, if you listen to Bezmenov basically talked about how what the KGB was intending to do was to essentially he mostly talked about the left, but also that the right, they wanted to use the radical elements of the left and the radical elements in the right in America to get them to fight each other and to go to their logical conclusions to essentially erode the cultural fabric of American society. And to the extent that you could say that that's an active, involved process versus just saying a few things in motion and letting it unfold, we can have a debate there. Yeah. But I mean, BLM is a great example of this because you say, why would a Russian state that's basically fascist, why would they support these progressives? Why would they support the Green Party? Why would they support BLM and everything? Because they don't have a stake they don't care if the left or the right wins in America. They just care that the Pentagon loses. So.
Bernie Sanders, Bernie Sanders was initially their first choice in 2016 because he most aligned with their interest. Then Trump came along and bulldozed his way through. And like they would have been fine with either Trump or Sanders because more or less they would fulfill the same
destabilizing.
Exactly, precisely. But yeah, in regards to I just wanted to make a comment real quick where I was actually for my YouTube channel, this was back in September, I started making a video for on Yuri Bezmenov, and I was commentating. I was trying to do like an article commentary, but it didn't really work out. I don't think that's really what my style of content is really going to be. But so I scrapped it. But it was a Kotaku gaming article that was criticizing Call of Duty for perpetuating right-wing conspiracy theories about Soviet. And it's like, no, this is actually all proven.
Theory. It actually is true. The KGB plan, and we know this.
It's conspiracy empiricism.
Yeah, we know this because we know, like the Cold War's over. We have the documents. The KGB hyped up the anti-war left in America to hurt
even the civil rights movement. They wanted to. I mean, the civil rights movement. This is, of course, not me bashing the civil rights movement, but just like objectively speaking, they did stir the pot there too. Because they just wanted to cause as much chaos as possible. And that was a social upheaval.
No, that's one of the things we have to remember about the civil rights movement is that we can look at it now and just see the things that came about from it that were good, and that's all that we think of it. No, there were serious riots there that if I was watching and I was commentating on, I would be, these people need to be arrested, basically. Like they're burning.
You had and you had like the leaders of the movements, the actual principled leaders who were condemning the riots, like MLK and even Malcolm even Malcolm X was anti-riot. But
the Russians supported the riots, though, and it's the same thing with BLM today. It's not to say that everybody in BLM is pro-Russia. That's not the case. Almost everybody who's there is not acting directly for Russia. It's that the leadership, by and large, is promoted by the Russians because they want to cause chaos and instability and everything. And even if you support the movement, you can recognize why Putin supports it too, because he sees it as eroding the stability of the American system.
It's almost as if this was like their contingency plan. Like if the USSR was falling apart, it's like, okay, we're going to unleash this now. So if we're going down, we'll take the US down with us eventually.
No, I disagree because they did this back in the 70s.
Oh yeah, no, this has been going on since the late 50s. But it's just
this is not a contingency plan. I want to be clear about something.
That was just a speculation. That was just like something I threw out there.
McCarthy was right when he said that we had communists on the inside. And he was right when he said we should probably investigate and see who's actually a fifth column, basically. We should probably do that again. And we should probably say who's actually acting as a foreign agent. We know Tulsi is. We know that Jimmy Dore is. But who else is there out there that's actually getting money from the Russians? Who else?
Probably Kyle Kalinske. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I think he's dumb enough.
I think he's just brainlet.
Well, yeah.
I think he actually is like paid by the Russians. Why does he have so much Patreon money when he's such an unentertaining piece of shit?
I actually think he's kind of. I think he can be entertaining at times.
No, I went to school with people that gave money to his Patreon. There are organic people out there in Canada that give him Patreon money, like guaranteed. There are definitely
Pakistanis.
Yeah, there are people in California. There are people in Vermont that give this guy Patreon money. It doesn't have to be a Russian thing or whatever. I really genuinely believe that Kyle is so dumb that he shills for the Russians for free. He's just a useful idiot. Jimmy Dore's a fifth column. He's not a useful idiot. He's actually received.
He'll platform CCP people funded by the CCP.
Oh yeah, but
I actually find Jimmy Dore entertaining. I disagree with him, but I do legitimately find him entertaining quite a bit. But yeah, I would agree with you in terms of him being a tool.
Yeah, well, he's a fifth column. I mean, Kyle's a useful idiot. Jimmy's an actual fifth column. He's actually working for the enemy from within. That's why I say
I want to go that far, but I see why. I can see the argument for it. I can see the argument.
I mean, for example, he got an award by the Syrian state for $2,500 for some journalism award. Yeah, that's
he's a journalist. What?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. He always likes to fall back on comedy or whatever, but he's not funny. His comedy is ironically, his
phone calls. His phone calls are funny.
Yeah, no, those are bullshit. Those are stupid straw mans where it'll be like, oh, Wolf Blitzer's calling in, or oh, Chris Cuomo's coming in, and you're like, oh, we're gonna have the Russian straw man of all of these American figures. Oh, wonderful. No,
Vince Vaughn is funny.
Jimmy Dore is as unfunny as Trevor Noah. Like, and they both parrot the Russian line at the end of the day. So, you know.
Okay, yeah, I don't want to get into that.
I mean, Trevor Noah literally unironically supports the BLM rioters. So, I mean,
yeah, no, you know, it's if you don't let them if you don't let them riot, it's white privilege.
No, see, that's the thing. So we are going to wrap this up, but you know, I think the last part of this was pretty relevant to what we were talking about, which is that regardless of who's in charge in Russia, if it's Navalny, if it's Putin, if it's Shoigu, if it's Peskov, regardless of who's in charge, they're going to be our enemy, and they're still going to be aiming the nukes, and they're still going to be subverting us. And if Navalny's in charge, they're not going to be as corrupt, so they'll probably do a better job. And that's my stance on that. And so I'm not saying we shouldn't stand in solidarity with the Russian people and champion democracy in Russia. All I'm saying is we should do an actual color revolution. We shouldn't be rooting on people like Navalny who are Russian nationalists. We should be rooting on American supporters in Russia to turn Russia into an Americanized system, not Navalny who wants to revive Russia as a rival, because we need to destroy our rivals before we have to actually do a nuclear war with them. That's my stance. I guess we'll go to Politicrat, though, for your closing remarks, and then I'll do the closing pitch, and then we'll end the stream.
All right. First, because remember, so I'll take like 30 seconds just to say this part, but there was that one question I was asked. It was a short answer, but there was the question that I was asked as my computer ended up shutting off. It was just, do you support Kaiser? I mean, not Kaiser. Do you support in Russia the return of a czar? Yeah, I support the return of a czar, maybe with a constitutional system. Very similarly, I support constitutional Kaiserism in Germany. Bring back the fucking Kaiser. It will be good for a good source of national pride.
But you know that Russia would never do it because Putin would never give up power, right? So
I mean, it would be funny if he made himself czar, but
he can't. He's not Romanov.
New dynasty.
Well, then we would oppose that at every turn. Like, I support the Romanov. Like, I would support the Romanovs if they were pro-West. A Putin Tsarist system would be aiming nukes at us. Like, I want. Like, I'll just say this. I've said it many times before. I want to be clear about something. When people say, "Oh, well, this is America interfering in Russia," but then Russia interfered in America, that's just geopolitics. No. Here's the deal. I want America to have 100% control of Russia. I want Russia to have 0% control of America. I want America to run the world. I want Russia to not even exist. That's my stance. Like, I want them to be a series of different countries that are all loyal U.S. allies. That's what I want for Russia. Should
Canada become North Montana? Would you support that?
Well, I want the whole world eventually to be basically a federation of democracies with
Starship Troopers. That would be cool.
What's that?
Should be Starship Troopers.
What's that?
You've never read Starship? It's like actually considered one of the greatest science fiction novels at all time. But it was written, also considered the greatest anti-communist novel of all time. Written in 1957 at the height of the Cold War. Robert Heinlein, who also did Moon is a Harsh Mistress and Stranger in a Strange Land, one of the big three, along with Isaac Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke. But so it's basically about this war of like these the Federation is like the Earth, the sort of Earth government, and it's basically a liberal democracy. But he makes it sort of, this is sort of like a framing device. This is part of the argument that he weaves in within. He more or less argues that in order for people to take democracy seriously, in order for people to take liberalism seriously, democracy is something that is too sacred to be born with, more or less. So he argues basically, so in this society, you're born with every single right that we would have in Western countries, with the exception of suffrage. In order to obtain suffrage, you have to do 2 years military service. Because because people take more seriously that which they earn as opposed to that which they are given. And it's basically a moral defense. It's basically all about it makes a moral argument why we need just a return to civic virtue in the society. So I unironically believe, I think that voting, I don't think you should be born with the right to vote. I'm going to outright say that. That's the first time I've ever said that on a live stream before. But
well, yeah. I mean, we can see the consequences of that today, where you've got people who, they don't care that they stand on the shoulders of all those who died in the world wars and everything for America to be where they are. They don't appreciate the democracy that they have. I would have no problem with it if you said, only those, like I've said it before, like people say, oh, well, if you're not in the military, you don't get to take on foreign policy. I'd be 100% fine with the only people who get to stay on foreign policy being the generals in the Pentagon.
That's exactly what Starship Trooper, that's basically how it is. Basically, the ones who get to participate in the government are the ones who did their service and actually have that experience. Because basically, so this is the argument I more or less make. Why should like a 30-year-old willfully unemployed guy who is like a fat ass, sits in his parents' basement in the dark, eating potato chips, watching the Kardashians all day?
Probably watching Russia Today too.
Yeah, well, so Russia. No, he's not even political at all. I don't know. Maybe Russia Today. So why should he have the same level of say, or even any say at all? Why should he have the same kind of power as somebody who did 3 tours of Afghanistan? Why? How is that moral to give that person as much a say in the political system as somebody who literally basically do your civic, do basically prove to society, do something for society, prove to society that you deserve to have a say in the decisions that will ultimately affect society as a whole. That's my argument for it.
Wait, so I got a question though. Was the author of this an endorsement of that system, or was he making this out to be like a dystopia or something?
So people have often misinterpreted it as a dystopia, including the director of the movie. And that's an entirely different thing. Great movie, but it is not the book. They're 2 totally different things. You have to look at them as 2 totally different things. But Heinlein was like a weird sort of libertarian. Like, he was a libertarian, but at the same time, he kind of advocated for basically the system of government he advocated for was very similar to like a Roman Republic type thing. He was pro death penalty, I know.
Oh, well, I'm a huge supporter of the death penalty.
He was a hardcore Barry Goldwater supporter.
Oh, that's base. Barry Goldwater was fucking base. John Bolton, like one of my idols, John Bolton campaigned for Barry Goldwater when he was 15 years old.
I now respect John Bolton a tiny bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But
he talks about that all the time. I mean, there are people out there that try to dismiss him as a Democrat, a communist, all this kind of stuff because he's against
Hillary Clinton. Wasn't she? She was a supporter of Goldwater too.
Yeah, well, I like Hillary Clinton. I think Hillary Clinton would have made a great president.
She was definitely qualified. I don't personally like her. Like, I voted for her in 2016.
Okay.
But the reason I voted for her, I figured she was so fucking greedy and corrupt. She would have made us a ton of money. And that would have been great. Great for GDP.
I disagree on that. I disagree on that. I actually think corporate corruption hurts America at large, and I don't like a lot of her economics. I gotta keep it real. I think her
she's too like free market, like pro-international free market.
Too neoliberal for my taste. But her stance on Syria is based. Her stance on Russia was pretty based. Like, she's hawkish, because at the end of the day, I want hawkish leaders by and large. And Hillary Clinton was the most hawkish Democrat that had ever run for president. That, like, I can even recall. I mean, we're talking about like decades and decades. She was the most hawkish. I mean, obviously, the Republicans have consistently been hawkish, with the exception of H.W. Bush and Donald Trump. But the rest were pretty good on foreign policy. Hillary Clinton was an exception to the Democrats, where she was actually hawkish. She said straight up, like, no, we're going to do no-fly zone. And if Assad fucks around, we'll go in there. And people are like, oh, it could be World War III or whatever. And in which case, I would say, try me. If Russia wants to get nuked over Syria, they will lose. You know, even though they've got all these nukes, they're not as up to speed as the Americans are. And if America launched the first strike against Russia, Russia would lose. I'm guaranteed of that America would win a war.
What's funny is, like, if literally every single country in the world teamed up against America, the United States would still win.
Oh, America would just nuke them. Like, what are they going to do? People say, oh, but you can't do anything about China. China has nukes. I'm like, they have 300 and they're not that great. And they're not even really operational. And if America in 45 minutes launched a strike against China, China wouldn't have anything to fire back with. America could wipe out China's civilization in 45 minutes. China couldn't do the same to America. China couldn't even really do anything, actually. Now, are we going to wait until they can? I think that's stupid.
I think it's fun. I think it's funny. I think it's kind of fun to just fuck around with them, though, too, in like the South China Sea.
Well, the thing about China is I want to destroy them economically. I'm not actually advocating for a war with China.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I thought you, wait, I was told, like, everyone did you used to be for a war with China? Because I remember everyone had always talked about on Twitter about how you support nuking China preemptively.
Well, that's a bit of a meme. I've always said I want basically here's my stance. I want a strong leader to come in that will lay down the law and tell these corporations, look, you can be people, but you owe your allegiance to the state, and you are not trading with them. We are having all non-essential, like basically we're having all essential stuff made at home. We are doing all military stuff independently. And you might be able to make some stuff like chewing gum and stuff over in India. That's cool. But nobody's making anything in China. And if you subvert that, we're going to shut you down as a company, and we're going to appropriate your resources. We're going to bankrupt them, and we're going to sanction any country that does business with them, like Switzerland or Sweden or whoever. And if anybody else anywhere does business with them, like Russia, you're getting sanctioned. That's my stance on it. And if we can't do that, it's going to come to a war, because if we're going to say, oh, we're not going to do anything about them economically. I thought that the virus would wake people up and that there was a chance that we would actually get tough on China economically. It turns out no. So I'm convinced at this point.
Apparently it's racist.
So I'm convinced at this point that we will have a conflict with them. And I'm convinced that the conflict will involve nuclear weapons. I'd rather nuke them now when they have 300 than wait for them to nuke us when they have the same number as America. That's my stance. So I'd rather win a nuclear war now than lose a nuclear war in the future. So, but I don't support. I'd rather get rid of the neoliberal establishment and just get tough on them. You know, that's my stance.
But yeah, I definitely recommend Starship Troopers. Especially if you like a lot of it's about like basically think of Ernst Junger's Storm of Steel in space and fighting against bugs that are an allegory for communists or a metaphor for communists.
Okay, well, I'm not sure about that, but like
this is hive mind bug race that they're fighting against.
Okay,
they're supposed to be they represent communists, because this was written in 1957.
Okay.
Basically, but the entire thing is Heinlein predicted that within the next 50 years following the Second World War, that civic virtue and cohesion in the West would more or less fall apart, and people would start becoming dependent on welfare and the state, bread and circuses, and that democracy would more or less collapse. And so basically what he was saying is, in order for the system to work, you need to sort of put policies in place in order to, or like, basically restructure democracy in such a way that it incentivizes you to behave or you to perform acts of civic virtue. And
we don't even have a conception in Canada or the US anymore of civic nationalism. We just don't.
The US that just barely, and people like, for instance, you have some people in the US who do. However, half of those people think they're nationalists, but are really just like Trumpists, because the thing is, Trump supporters who say they're nationalists aren't really nationalists. They do not have loyalty to the nation. They have loyalty to their strongman. The thing is, whereas I consider myself a civic nationalist. That's why the label that most probably befits me would be national liberal. So
okay.
So basically, classical liberalism plus civic nationalism. But I also don't want to. I've also since distanced myself from the term classical liberal because of a certain talk show host.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the neoliberals for a minute, because it's like, if you did believe in,
I used to be on Globe Twitter. I was so cringe.
yeah, if you were a big supporter of a strong nation, you would understand that, like, some of those classical liberal tenets, they can work within the country, but when you apply that to free trade abroad, you're really hurting your interests. Like, I basically support neo-mercantilism when it comes to China.
Yeah, I'm not for neo-mercantil. I'm basically a case by case basis when it comes to. So because the thing is, I look at the bigger picture, and in looking at the bigger picture, you're able to identify that it is multi-layered. Like, there's not a one size fits all type thing. You need to specifically, it's complicated. It's complicated in how you need to like structure systems. You can't just say, boom, here's like this one size fits all system. Kind of like when people are like, oh, gun control or whatever, or $15 minimum wage. Let's do this federally. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that. You can't just like do that and expect it to work. You need to sort of go within the context of like, take a look what's going on in this place. Is this aligned with the interests of these particular people? Is this aligned with us? What's the cost benefit going to be?
I would argue it's never justified. I mean, what are you doing if you have any minimum wage? You're basically saying
no. I'm not even talking about that at this point. I was using that as an example, but I was actually, when I was talking about that, I was coming back to the trade part, looking at like with different countries and stuff. But yeah, no. So yeah, Starship Troopers. I wish more libertarians read Heinlein, because especially the Ayn Rand upset, like the Ayn Rand fanboys. And to be honest, I thought The Fountainhead was actually a good piece of literature. Atlas Shrugged could not make it through Atlas Shrugged, like some of her nonfiction, but I don't understand why she's like worshipped like some kind of goddess. I would argue we need, as far as political theorists who disguise their political treatises as fiction novels go, Heinlein takes the gold, I'd say.
Yeah, well, I've never read Heinlein.
Okay,
So.
I actually, on my channel, and in case anybody's watching, feel free to go take a look. I just did an interview a couple days ago, I did it a week ago, but I posted it a couple days ago, with Dr. David Friedman, who is the son of the late Milton Friedman.
Okay.
So we talked about economics and legal theory early on, and then like for the last 2/3 of the stream, we literally talked about science fiction and fantasy novels the entire time.
Okay.
So we talked about Heinlein too, who's his favorite. So
yeah, so we are going to wrap this up and everything, but I mean, it's worth discussing basically just the extent to which Russia profoundly tries to undermine our social fabric. And again, just to emphasize for everybody, don't place your hopes in Navalny or anything. Even if by some miracle he got power in Russia, that would just make Russia a bigger threat. At least with Putin, they're too corrupt to be that formidable. With Navalny, they'd be a more effective fighting force against us. So I want Russia to be a democracy, not with a Russian nationalist in charge, though. Let's be clear about that.
Let's get down to,
I mean, a federation of independent democracies that are all smaller, easier to manage, and all under American hegemony. As opposed to this.
Moscow Duchy, restore the old Muscovy.
And none of them have nukes, by the way. I don't believe that any country outside of America should have nukes as well. But that's probably something for a debate down the road if you disagree. But
I kind of do. But yeah, let's not get into that, because I feel like you and I especially, I feel like we'll mention one little thing and then that'll be.
Well, that's the thing. You can watch my video. I literally have a stream from about 6 months ago. You just type in superpower broadcasting. America should be the only country that has nukes. And you can see my reasoning. This is from about 6 months ago. But we are going to end now. So thank you for watching, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't done so yet. I do daily streams and premieres. You can also subscribe to the Politicrat over on his channel.
Please do.
Big time panels as well. And if you want to support what I do, check out my Ko-Fi, my PayPal, as well as you can join the Patreon gang over on patreon.com/superpowerbroadcasting. And once we get up to $500 a month, I will have 2 premieres dropping each day in addition to the daily live stream. So with that, I will see you in the next video, and have a good night.